The message took weeks to cross the gulf of space. It carried the desperation of an entire galaxy, a plea from the edge of extinction. Few among the coalition believed it would reach its destination. Fewer still believed there would be an answer. Yet the answer came. The humans replied. It was not the answer the coalition had expected. It was not polite, not formal, not full of bows and honorifics like the diplomatic replies they were used to. The human transmission was short and direct. We received your message. We will hear you. Send your delegation to Earth, that was all. No promises, no warmth, just blunt words, heavy with a confidence that made many of the council uneasy. The coalition prepared a small delegation. Their fleet was too weak to risk many ships, and their trust in these humans was uncertain. A single cruiser escorted by 2 light frigates set out across the stars toward the forbidden world called Earth. Inside the cruiser, tension was thick. General Veka of the Vera paced the halls, her claws tapping against the metal floor. "This is folly," she muttered. "We go to beg savages for help. What kind of warriors hide on a world no one dares visit?" Kelran, the scout who had first spoken of Earth, stood at the viewport watching the stars pass. His voice was calm, though his heart beat fast. "They do not hide, General. They endure. That is different." The Kalari archivist, frail but wise, gave a soft sigh. "Perhaps we should not think of them as savages or as saviors. They are simply another people. And yet if even half the stories are true, then they are unlike any we have ever met." No one replied. There was nothing left to say. When the fleet entered the Sol system, they were met with human ships. Not vast fleets like the Zirak, but sturdy vessels bristling with weapons. The humans did not greet them with ceremony. They scanned the coalition ships thoroughly, ensuring no hidden weapons or spies were aboard before allowing them to approach. Earth filled the viewport. Blue oceans, green lands, white clouds swirling in storms. To the coalition delegates, it looked almost peaceful. Only Kelran whispered, "This is the Death World." The humans welcomed them onto the surface, not in palaces or grand cities, but in a facility of steel and glass. Armed soldiers lined the halls, their eyes sharp, their movements disciplined. They were not dressed in decorative armor like many coalition guards, but in simple uniforms made for function, not beauty. The delegation was led into a chamber where the human council waited. The humans were taller than most expected. Their skin came in many shades, their hair in many colors, and their eyes carried a sharpness that unsettled even the proud Serath. They did not look like beasts. They looked like survivors. The leader among them, a woman with dark eyes and a voice steady as stone, introduced herself. "I am Commander Elena Vasquez, chosen by Earth's Council to speak for us. You asked for aid. We will hear your case." Her words were not soft. They were not cruel either. They were simply measured. High Chancellor Rovan bowed his head slightly. "We come on behalf of the coalition of races. The Zerak Dominion has waged war upon us for over 10 cycles. We have lost fleets, worlds, and hope. They will not stop until all are under their rule. Soon they will turn their eyes to you." Commander Vasquez listened without interruption. The other humans sat silent, their faces unreadable. When Rovan finished, General Veka stepped forward. Pride still burned in her, even in desperation. "We do not beg lightly. But if you fight beside us, if you lend us your strength, we may yet turn the tide. If not, then know this. The Zerak will reach your world eventually. You will face them alone." For a long moment, silence filled the chamber. The humans exchanged brief glances, subtle but sharp like unspoken words passing between them. Finally, Commander Vasquez leaned forward. "You speak of war. We know war. Our world has seen it many times. But tell me, why should humanity fight and die for you? We have no alliance with your coalition. Your worlds are far from ours. Why should Earth bleed for strangers?" The question struck the chamber like a blade. Coalition leaders shifted uneasily. They had prepared arguments, speeches about honor and duty, but in that moment none of it felt strong enough. It was Kelran who spoke. His voice was quiet but steady. "Because if we fall, you will face the Zerak alone. They will come for you, Commander. Not tomorrow, not next year, but someday. And when they do, you will wish you had allies who understood the price of survival." The words hung in the air, simple but true. For the first time, one of the humans smiled, not kindly but with a hint of respect. The negotiations stretched for hours. The humans questioned everything: coalition strength, numbers, resources, strategies. They wanted details, not speeches. They spoke less of glory and more of logistics. At last, Commander Vasquez stood. Earth will not fight for pride. We will not fight for promises of future rewards, but we will fight for survival. If the Xerac are what you say, then they will not stop at your borders. They will come for us. That is reason enough. Relief flooded the coalition delegates, though it was tempered by unease. The humans had agreed, but not out of friendship. They had agreed out of necessity. As the meeting ended, General Veka muttered to Kelran, "They are cold." "Too cold." Kelran shook his head. "No, they are not cold. They are focused. There is a difference." The following days revealed more of the humans. Coalition observers were allowed to watch their soldiers train. What they saw both impressed and unsettled them. Human soldiers ran for hours under heavy loads. They wrestled in mud and water, fought with fists as much as with weapons. Their drills were brutal, their standards high. Many stumbled, but none gave up. When asked why they trained so hard, a human sergeant only laughed. "Because the universe doesn't care if we're tired. We fight until we can't, and then we keep fighting." The coalition delegates began to understand. These were not the strongest warriors in the galaxy, nor the most advanced, but they were relentless. Where others yielded, humans endured. At the final council before departure, Commander Vasquez spoke plainly. "If we commit our forces, you must understand, humanity does not fight halfway. We will bleed. We will sacrifice, but we will also expect the same from you. Do not ask us to save you if you are not willing to save yourselves." The coalition leaders exchanged uneasy glances. They were not used to such bluntness. Yet there was no deception in the humans' eyes. Only truth. High Chancellor Rovan bowed his head. "Then let us fight together." And so it was decided. The Deathworlders would join the war. When the coalition delegation departed Earth, they carried more than an agreement. They carried a sense of something dangerous, something powerful. As their ship rose into the stars, Kelran whispered words that would echo in many minds. "If anyone can stand against the Xerac, it will be them." The return journey from Earth was unlike the one that had brought the coalition delegates there. Before, the cruiser had carried only doubt and despair. Now it carried something heavier and sharper, expectation. Humanity had agreed to fight. The Deathworlders were coming. When the coalition delegation arrived back at their hidden station, the council chamber filled quickly. Leaders who had nearly abandoned hope gathered to hear what had been decided. "They agreed?" Chancellor Rovan asked, his voice almost trembling. "Yes," Kelran confirmed. His eyes burned with determination. "The humans will join us. They are not like us, Chancellor. They do not promise out of honor nor speak of glory. They act because they understand survival. If the Xerac are to be stopped, it will begin with them." Skepticism remained, of course. General Veka muttered under her breath, "We will see what kind of warriors they truly are." But even she no longer spoke of surrender. Weeks later, the first human fleets arrived at Coalition space. Their ships were different from the sleek, curved vessels of the Serath or the crystalline structures of the Kalari. Human ships looked practical. Harsh lines, thick armor, heavy weapons. They were not graceful, but they looked ready to endure punishment. The humans wasted no time with grand introductions. They met with coalition commanders, studied maps of battlefields, and asked blunt questions about supply lines and enemy numbers. Where the coalition leaders hesitated, humans demanded clarity. Commander Elena Vasquez herself arrived with the fleet. She stood at the war table, her hands steady as she traced routes across star maps. "The Xerac's next move is predictable. They will strike at the Itheran system. If they take it, they cut your supply chain in half." General Veka frowned. "We had thought to avoid battle there. Our forces are too weak." "Then they'll win without firing a shot," Vasquez said plainly. Her dark eyes swept across the council. "The Xerac rely on fear as much as fire. If they take Itheran unopposed, your people will believe the war is already lost. We can't allow that." "And what do you suggest?" Rovan asked carefully. "We fight," Vasquez said. "We hit them harder than they expect. We show them, for the first time, that they are not invincible." Her words were simple, but they lit something in the chamber. The decision was made. The Xerac arrived at Itheran in force. Their fleet spread across the system like a storm of blades, warships glittering with cruel light. The coalition defenders, weakened and weary, braced for another hopeless stand. But this time they were not alone. Human ships surged forward alongside them. Their engines roared with reckless speed, their formations tighter, their weapons hungry. The Zirak commanders expected hesitation. They found none. The battle began. Coalition vessels moved cautiously as they always had, firing from distance, careful not to overextend. But the humans did not fight that way. Their ships plunged straight into the heart of the Zirak formation. Missiles streaked, railguns thundered, and human fighters darted like angry insects around the larger warships. They took hits, heavy hits, but their armor held longer than expected. Where other species would have retreated, humans pressed forward. One Zirak cruiser targeted a human destroyer, crippling its engines. Instead of fleeing, the human ship rammed the cruiser head-on. The explosion tore both vessels apart, leaving a hole in the Zirak lines. Coalition commanders gasped. General Veka's claws gripped the arm of her chair. "Madness," she whispered. Yet the gap created by the sacrifice allowed coalition ships to surge forward, blasting the enemy apart. The Zirak had faced many foes before. None had fought like this. On the ground, the story was the same. Zirak legions landed on Itharan's main colony, expecting the defenders to break quickly. Coalition soldiers had grown used to retreating under overwhelming force. But human soldiers landed beside them, their boots hitting the soil with the steady rhythm of confidence. The Zirak charged. The humans did not retreat. They advanced. Bullets and plasma fire filled the air. Human infantry shouted commands, their voices loud and fierce. They moved in squads, covering one another, pushing forward step by step. When Zirak warriors slammed into them with claws and blades, the humans fought back with knives, rifles, even bare fists if they had to. They were not the strongest, but they were relentless. A young Itharan defender watched in shock as a human sergeant pulled him to his feet after he had fallen. "Stand up. We're not done yet," the human barked, pushing the alien soldier back into the fight. The Itharan had never seen anything like it. Where his people fought carefully, afraid of death, the humans fought as if death were only another step forward. The battle raged for hours. Above, ships exploded in flashes of fire. Below, soldiers clashed in mud and smoke. The Zirak pressed hard, but for the first time in years, they did not simply roll over their enemies. Commander Vasquez stood on the command deck of her ship, eyes locked on the battle. Reports came in of losses, of ships destroyed, of men and women fallen, but she did not flinch. "Hold the line," she ordered. "Push them back. Show them we do not break." And slowly, incredibly, the Zirak began to falter. It was not just the human firepower. It was the way they fought. With every reckless charge, with every stand against impossible odds, the humans inspired the coalition soldiers beside them. Where before they would have fled, now they followed. They shouted with the humans, fought with them, and began to believe again. By the time the sun of Itharan dipped below the horizon, the unthinkable had happened. The Zirak were retreating. Their fleet, battered and bleeding, pulled back from the system. Their ground forces withdrew, leaving behind smoldering ruins but not victory. For the first time in the war, the Zirak had been stopped. Coalition soldiers stood in stunned silence amid the wreckage. Some cheered weakly, their voices uncertain, as if afraid the victory might vanish if they believed in it too strongly. Others wept, and the humans? The humans simply reloaded their weapons, repaired their ships, and prepared for the next fight. General Veka approached Commander Vasquez after the battle. Her claws were still stained with ash, her eyes wide with disbelief. "I have seen many wars," she admitted quietly, "but I have never seen soldiers fight like yours. They do not fear death." Vasquez shook her head. "No, they fear it. But they fight anyway. That's the difference." Word of the battle spread like fire across the galaxy. Worlds that had been ready to surrender whispered of hope. Species that had already given up looked once more to the stars. And the Zirak? For the first time in their history of conquest, they recorded a defeat. It was small in the scale of their empire, but it was enough to sting. In the dark halls of their war council, a Zirak commander slammed his claws on the table. "Who are these creatures? These humans?" No one had an answer, but across the stars a new name began to echo. The Deathworlders. The galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. Word of the humans' first battle at Itharan spread like wildfire, carried by pilots, traders, and spies alike. Every star system that had trembled under the shadow of the Zirak, now whispered one name with awe and fear: the Deathworlders. Coalition leaders who had once whispered only of survival now spoke openly of hope. There was no longer a sense that defeat was inevitable. Instead, a cautious optimism took root. If humans could halt a Zerak fleet, perhaps the unthinkable, a true victory, was possible. Back at the Coalition command station, preparations were underway for the next engagement. The Zerak had not forgotten their defeat. In fact, they had become more ruthless. Their fleets were stronger, their strategies more unpredictable. But the humans did not flinch. Commander Elena Vasquez gathered her officers around the tactical table. "The Zerak will strike again," she said, pointing to a holographic display of the galaxy. "We need to anticipate their moves and hit first. Surprise is our greatest advantage." Her subordinates nodded. They were used to human bluntness by now. Where other species hesitated in planning, humans demanded clarity. "We can't rely on luck," Vasquez continued. "We rely on preparation and courage." Kelran, the Coalition scout, watched silently. He had been with humans through their first clash, and he still marveled at their confidence. "They fight as if the universe itself owes them nothing," he whispered to General Veka. Veka grunted. "They fight as if nothing else matters but standing. And somehow, it works." The next major battle came at the Sarathus cluster, a series of systems vital to Coalition supply lines. Zerak scouts had discovered it and were poised to strike with overwhelming force. Coalition forces scrambled to defend it, but this time, humans did not wait to be attacked. Human ships surged ahead of the main fleet, weaving between asteroids and debris, striking Zerak patrols before they could warn the main armada. The Zerak, accustomed to easy victories, found themselves surprised at every turn. Human ships used daring tactics. They split their formations, attacked from blind spots, and engaged enemy vessels in ways no one else would dare. Even when cornered, they did not retreat. They pressed harder. General Veka, observing from her command bridge, could hardly believe what she was seeing. They are doing the impossible," she muttered. Kelran smiled grimly. "Impossible only exists for those who refuse to fight. Humans, they redefine it." On the ground, the battle mirrored the chaos in space. Zerak forces landed on the cluster's primary planets, expecting easy domination. But human soldiers were already there, moving through towns and terrain with uncanny precision. Coalition soldiers had been trained for years to hold lines and retreat strategically. Humans taught them differently. They showed how to fight aggressively, to turn disadvantage into opportunity. A human sergeant leading a mixed squad of humans and aliens shouted across the battlefield, "Hold the streets! Push forward! Show them you are not afraid." Where Coalition forces once hesitated, they now surged with newfound confidence. Alien soldiers who had never believed they could stand against the Zerak now found courage in the humans' example. And the Zerak? They began to falter. As the battle wore on, Coalition and human forces executed a daring plan. Using the humans' knowledge of terrain and unpredictable strategies, they set up ambushes deep within Zerak territory. Entire fleets were trapped in asteroid belts, unable to maneuver, while human ships fired from unexpected angles. The Zerak High Commander, usually calm and calculating, was furious. "Who are these creatures?" he demanded. "How do they strike where they should not be able to strike? How do they endure losses that would break others?" Even among his own officers, uncertainty grew. For the first time, they feared not just defeat, but humiliation. The final phase of the battle came when humans led a strike team to destroy the Zerak supply hub at the edge of the cluster. It was a heavily guarded installation, deep inside a barren asteroid field. The Coalition War Council had considered it impossible, but the humans insisted. Vasquez addressed the assembled pilots and soldiers. "This is our chance. If we take this hub, the Zerak will be crippled for months. It will show the galaxy that the Dominion is not invincible. We succeed or we die trying. Either way, we fight as one." And they did. Human strike ships plunged into the asteroid field, dodging turrets and mines. They moved in formation, each ship covering the other. Where one was hit, another took its place, relentless in their advance. Ground teams navigated tunnels, disabling defenses with precision and speed. Coalition soldiers followed their lead. For the first time, alien troops trusted not just strategy but instinct. following the humans into situations that would have terrified them before. Hours later, the Zarak hub exploded in a spectacular firestorm, sending debris scattering across the system. Communication lines were severed, supply lines destroyed, and morale shattered. Back at the Coalition command station, news of the victory arrived in waves. Cheers erupted among officers who had almost given up hope. Leaders who had been cautious and fearful now dared to speak of retaking lost worlds. The Zarak, meanwhile, retreated into their own space, licking their wounds and reconsidering their approach. They had met humans now, and humans were unlike any enemy they had faced. Persistent, relentless, unyielding. Captured Zarak officers, brought before Coalition interrogators, could barely speak without bitterness. One hissed through clenched teeth. These humans, they fight as though they have nothing to lose. How can they not? It was not magic or power that unnerved the Zarak. It was will. The Deathworlders' refusal to surrender, to yield, to hesitate in the face of danger. It was something the Zarak had never seen. As the sun set over the Coalition command station, Kelrin and General Veka stood side by side on the observation deck. The stars twinkled above, far brighter than before, as if the galaxy itself had taken notice of the human arrival. They've changed everything, Veka said quietly. Kelrin nodded. Yes, they've reminded everyone why survival matters, and now, the galaxy will never forget them. Vasquez's voice came over the comms, calm and steady as always. Prepare for the next engagement. The Zarak will not give up. Neither will we. And neither will humanity. Somewhere deep inside, in every star system, a spark of hope had been lit. The tide of the war was turning not just because of ships or weapons, but because of the humans, the Deathworlders who refused to bow. And for the first time in years, the Coalition dared to dream of victory. The galaxy held its breath. The Zarak, though battered and humiliated in recent engagements, had gathered what remained of their fleets. Their intention was clear: crush the Coalition once and for all, destroy the humans who had dared to defy them, and finish the war with a decisive strike. The location chosen for the final confrontation was a massive, fortress-like world called SCIFI-Prime, the heart of the Zarak Dominion. Its atmosphere shimmered with radioactive storms, and its surface was scarred with the ruins of centuries of warfare. No one who had ever visited Zithra returned without loss. Yet this time, the Coalition and humans marched together. Inside the Coalition command station, leaders and strategists moved like a single organism. High Chancellor Rovan surveyed the star maps projected before him. This is the moment, he said softly. If we fail here, the galaxy falls. If we succeed, we change history forever. Kelrin, standing beside him, nodded. And we will succeed. Not because we have the strongest fleets, but because we fight like we have nothing to lose. General Veka, usually reserved and calculating, clenched her claws in anticipation. Then let's make them pay for every world they've destroyed. Across the room, human officers prepared their ships and troops. Commander Vasquez addressed her forces with her usual blunt clarity. We do not fight for fame. We do not fight for glory. We fight for survival. We fight for every world that cannot fight for itself. The Zarak believe nothing can stop them. They are about to learn how wrong they are. Her words were met with nods, murmurs, and quiet determination. Humans did not cheer. They did not boast. They prepared, steady and unshakable, ready to face what others feared. The Coalition fleet jumped into Zithra's system under the cover of a chaotic storm. Lightning arced across the sky, illuminating the jagged surface below. The Zarak fleet awaited, stretching across the orbit like a black tide, prepared to crush every intruder. The first moments of the battle were terrifying. Zarak ships opened fire with beams that cleaved through the darkness, tearing apart Coalition frigates and human destroyers alike. Explosions rippled across space, shaking the nerves of even the most seasoned officers. Yet the humans did not falter. Their ships weaved and dodged with precision, forming unpredictable formations that baffled the Zarak. Small strike teams moved through asteroid belts, ambushing larger vessels, then disappearing into debris fields. General Veka, observing from her command bridge, could hardly believe what she saw. They are relentless, she whispered, and somehow coordinated better than we are. Kelrin smiled grimly. They fight not for rules or strategy alone. They fight because they must, and that makes all the difference. On Zithra's surface, human and coalition forces landed together. The Zirak had fortified the planet, expecting any attack to be cautious and hesitant. Instead, the humans surged forward with a boldness that left their enemies reeling. Troops moved in squads, clearing trenches, disabling turrets, and rescuing trapped allies. Every time a human fell, two more took their place. Their endurance and bravery inspired alien soldiers who had never believed they could face the Zirak head-on. Commander Vasquez led a strike team deep into Zithra's core defenses. They encountered Zirak elites, powerful and brutal, but humans fought with the same reckless courage that had become their signature. They adapted quickly, improvising weapons and tactics on the spot, turning disadvantages into opportunities. A coalition officer whispered in amazement, "How can they fight like this? How can they endure so much?" Vasquez's calm voice came over the comms. "They fight because they have no choice. They fight because survival is everything. Remember that, soldier. That is the difference." As the battle intensified, human forces executed a daring maneuver that would become legendary. They split into two groups, one striking the front lines to distract, the other sneaking through a hidden corridor beneath Zithra's main fortress. The Zirak were caught off guard. Their elite guard, confident in the fortress's defenses, was unprepared for the humans' audacity. Explosions rocked the fortress as human teams advanced room by room. Coalition soldiers followed, learning quickly from the humans' unyielding courage. The Zirak began to panic. Their ordered defenses turned chaotic. High Commander Sithar of the Zirak roared in fury, his voice echoing through his fleet and across the planet's surface. "These humans, they cannot be stopped. Halt them, crush them, destroy them." Yet every order met resistance. Every assault failed. The humans adapted faster than the Zirak could respond. The turning point came when the human strike team reached SCIFI-Prime's central command hub. Vasquez and her squad breached the doors facing the Zirak High Council. The battle was fierce, with Zirak leaders fighting with desperation. But the humans did not yield. Their training, endurance, and willpower carried them through. Finally, the Zirak High Command fell. Communication networks went dark. Supply chains were severed. Their forces, scattered and leaderless, began retreating. The impossible had been achieved. Across Zithra, coalition and human troops cheered, though war was never truly celebrated. They had survived the impossible. They had won against a foe that seemed invincible. High Chancellor Rovan addressed the assembled forces in the aftermath. His voice was heavy with awe and gratitude. "Today we have witnessed not just courage, but the very essence of survival. Humanity has reminded us what it means to endure, to fight when all seems lost. We owe them our lives, our freedom, and our future." Commander Vasquez only nodded, her eyes calm. "We did what we had to do. Victory is not given. It is taken, and now we survive." Kelran, watching the humans, felt a deep respect welling inside him. "They are more than warriors," he said quietly. "They are a force of nature." The Zirak learned that too late. General Veka, usually reserved, gave a rare smile. "And the galaxy will never forget them. Not after today." In the weeks that followed, the Zirak retreated to their own space, licking wounds that would take cycles to heal. They had faced humans now, and humans were unlike any enemy they had encountered before. Persistent, relentless, unyielding. The word Deathworlders spread far and wide, a symbol of hope, fear, and determination. Species across the galaxy rebuilt, inspired by the humans' courage. Worlds once on the brink of surrender now trained harder, fought smarter, and hoped more fiercely. The Zirak's shadow was diminished, and for the first time in decades, peace, or at least the chance for peace, was imaginable. And the humans? They returned to Earth, battered but unbroken, already preparing for whatever the galaxy would throw at them next. They had proven their strength, but to them, it was never about fame. It was about survival, about doing what was necessary when all seemed lost. Commander Vasquez looked out at her people, proud but calm. "We survive," she said softly. "We endure, and we will be ready always." Kelran, watching the humans leave Zithra, felt the truth of her words. Humanity had done more than fight a battle. They had changed the course of the galaxy. They had turned despair into hope, hopelessness into courage, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The galaxy had never known fear like this. For centuries, the Zorath Alliance had stood as a beacon of strength and unity. Dozens of alien civilizations, each with their own fleets, their own cultures, their own proud traditions, had joined together to defend against threats. They believed their combined power was enough to face anything. But then came the Draxar swarm. The swarm did not negotiate. The swarm did not accept surrender. It consumed. Planet after planet fell. Star systems vanished into silence and entire populations disappeared without leaving even ruins behind. The Draxar advanced like a tidal wave, unstoppable, devouring everything in their path. Worlds once rich with life became empty husks, stripped of resources, their skies filled with dust and ash. The Zorath Alliance threw every ship, every soldier, and every weapon they had at the enemy. But the swarm never slowed. Now the line had come to VeraPrime. VeraPrime was no ordinary world. It was the gateway to the Alliance's heartland, the place where trade routes, communication relays, and military corridors connected. If it fell, the swarm would pour straight into the core systems and nothing would stand in its way. Every soldier, every commander, and every civilian in the Alliance knew what was at stake. VeraPrime had to hold. On the surface of the planet, the ground shook as enemy bombardments rained down from orbit. Towers crumbled, skies burned orange with fire, and the screams of evacuees filled the comm channels. The Zorath defense forces dug in deep trenches, their armor scorched from weeks of nonstop fighting. Their eyes were hollow, their movements slow, their spirits thin. They had seen too many friends fall. Commander Talon of the Zorath military stood at the edge of the forward base, watching the horizon through cracked helmet glass. His uniform was torn and one arm carried the scars of recent battle. Around him, soldiers adjusted weapons with hands that trembled from exhaustion. "We are the last shield," Talon said quietly. His voice transmitted through the comm system. "If we break, everything behind us will fall. We cannot let that happen." But though he spoke with firmness, even he knew the truth. Their lines would not hold forever. The swarm was endless. Above them in orbit, the Alliance fleet faced a nightmare. Draxar war beasts, massive bioships bristling with spines and tendrils, blotted out the stars. They hurled themselves at the defenders without pause, their organic hulls regenerating faster than plasma fire could burn through. Alliance ships fired beam after beam, launching missiles that lit the void like suns, but still the swarm advanced. Admiral Saran, commanding the defense fleet, leaned over the tactical display, his antennae twitching with worry. Reports streamed in. Destroyers lost, frigates consumed, cruisers forced into suicide runs just to slow the enemy. "How many remain?" he asked his aides. "Less than half, Admiral," came the reply. "And falling." Saran's mandibles clenched. He had fought for decades through pirate raids, border conflicts, and rebellions. Never had he seen anything like this. The swarm did not think, did not fear, did not rest. It came like a storm without end, he whispered to himself. Though the words carried across the silent bridge, "We are running out of time." In the cities of VeraPrime, civilians crowded into shelters, holding each other as the ground quaked. Families whispered final words, unsure if they would live to see another sunrise. For them, the war was no longer about victory. It was about survival for one more day, one more hour. Children asked their parents if help would come. Parents answered with silence. Everywhere across the planet, the feeling was the same. This was the end. Then came the day of the great assault. The Draxar fleet descended with full strength, filling the sky with shadow. Thousands of bioships darkened the heavens. On the ground, the swarm poured in waves, tearing through fortifications, overrunning bunkers, breaking walls that had been built to withstand centuries of war. Commander Talon led his forces at the northern front. Plasma turrets fired until their barrels melted. Soldiers launched rockets that tore into the enemy only for more to take their place. The air was thick with smoke and the smell of burning soil. One soldier, voice trembling, called out over the comms, "Commander, they don't stop. We kill them and still they come." Talon gritted his teeth. "Then we kill more. We fight until there is nothing left to fight with."
"Hold the line!"
But deep inside, he wondered if his words meant anything. Above, Admiral Saran's fleet broke apart piece by piece. Enemy creatures latched onto cruisers, tearing into hulls with claw-like limbs. Energy shields flickered, cracked, and vanished. Explosions blossomed like dying stars. The Admiral gave orders with calm precision. But his mind knew the truth. They were only delaying the inevitable. And then, just as the Draxar prepared their final push, just as the Alliance was about to collapse, sensors screamed with new readings. "Admiral," an officer shouted. Unknown fleet inbound. Vector from the outer rim. Saran spun toward the screen. His first thought was despair. Perhaps another swarm front, another flood of death. But the signatures were different. The ships were smaller, fewer, and their designs were crude compared to advanced alien engineering. Yet they came in fast, like arrows fired into the void. Identify, Saran ordered. The computers worked for several seconds, pulling through ancient star charts. Finally, a name appeared on the display. Humanity. The bridge fell silent. Few had ever heard of them. A minor species barely noticed, far from the great trade routes, their technology considered young and unrefined. The Alliance archives mentioned them only in passing. They were nothing compared to the vast powers of the galaxy. And yet, here they were, flying directly into the jaws of the swarm. On the ground, Talon received the transmission at the same moment. His visor displayed the symbols of the incoming fleet. His first reaction was disbelief. Humans? He whispered. His second reaction was a bitter laugh. We are finished if this is all the help we get. But then he saw something that silenced him. The human fleet, though smaller and fragile compared to the monstrous swarm, did not hesitate. They did not retreat. They flew directly at the enemy, weapons blazing, moving with a determination unlike anything Talon had ever seen. In the skies above Vera Prime, the first human missiles struck. The explosions were small compared to Alliance weapons, but the swarm staggered, not from the power but from the sheer recklessness of the attack. Human ships weaved between the monstrous bioships, dodging claws and spines, striking from impossible angles. The Draxar did not expect resistance like this. For the first time in the war, they hesitated. On the ground, Zorath soldiers paused, watching the strange, desperate fleet fight with fury. The sight stirred something inside them. Commander Talon clenched his fists, his voice steady now. Perhaps we are not finished after all. And so, at the darkest hour, when the galaxy's last shield was about to break, a forgotten species appeared on the battlefield. No one knew yet what they could truly do, but one thing was certain. Vera Prime had not fallen. Not yet.